It's 1:03. I guess I'll call the finance personnel meeting to order. Proof of public or notification was.
We are posted, Mr. Chair.
We've got 11-point agenda. And the previous, did everyone have time to review the previous? I guess we need to approve the agenda first. Motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agendas.
And I'll second.
Linda and Marty. Any discussion? There shouldn't be any. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, previous meeting minutes. We got two different ones. Did everybody have time to look over those? Like we had a closed session meeting and then we had the one prior to the county board meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve. Melissa?
Okay, Melissa with a motion.
I'll second that one.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman, point of order. Do we have a quorum?
We have 4.
Do we have?
David
and Sean notified that they would not be here. Donald Seep, Don gave me a telephone call at about 12:30. I was engaged with another supervisor. Tried to reach back out to him. I didn't have a message left, so I'm not entirely sure where Don might be.
So with 4, we should be okay with a quorum, I would assume.
Do we have a quorum?
All right. Okay, the number 5 on our agenda is discussion possible action on Tri-County Airport ownership appropriations.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to propose to the Sauk County Finance Committee an agreement for Richland County to assume the following ownership apportions: 35% ownership and apportionment of annual operating costs, and 30% ownership and apportionment of annual capital improvement costs. This would be on effective January 1st, 2022, and then entering then into the new airport agreement, which is still under works. The background on this item is underneath the ordinance 1916. Richland County was previously 25.5% ownership interest in all county airport assets. At that amount, Iowa County withdrew in accordance with Section 7 of the ordinance. They notified us in July of 2020, and they withdrew from the agreement and ownership airport on January 1st of this year. Sauk County continues to work with their contracted counsel in drafting a proposed replacing ordinance and agreement for an owner agreement between Richland and Sauk County. Entering the 2020, this year, the 2021 budget year, the finance personnel made a proposal to Sauk County of the reduction of 22% ownership based on population during a September 1st meeting of last year. In October, we negotiated, and through the Sauk County Chair, Timothy McCumber, led to the following correspondence. The Sauk County Finance Committee has recommended that Sauk County contributes 75.5% for 2021, and understanding that we'll negotiate ownership going forward with Brent Miller when he gets on board. That is, Brent Miller is the county administrator there. So essentially this last year, Sauk County picked up Iowa County's share of apportionment with Iowa County's exit and left us with 25.5% ownership. In the 2021 budget, we had negotiations were held this last Friday to discuss appropriations. Myself, Chair Brewer, Chair McCumber, and Administrator Miller in attendance. Sauk County's position on the situation is the economic impact of Richland County is seen in the Cardinal Glass payroll distributions is a ploy for them, encouraging us to pick up more of the ownership, as well as that the county's appropriation should more closely match a split of Iowa County's previous share. Our position was that our population and tax base concerns, as we have less than Sauk County, and then also our limited capacity for added capital costs, which we're well aware of with our different bonding. So we didn't reach negotiations concluded with us on an agreement to propose the following to our respective counties, that we would have an owner share of operation apportionments of 65% Sauk, 35% Richland County, essentially a 10% increase. That our ownership share on capital improvement appropriations would be a 70-30, essentially a 5% increase for Richland County. Discussion continued with administrators pursuing partnerships with local municipalities for a long-term plan for counties to eventually relinquish ownership of the airport once we get past the federal grant requirements. So kind of essentially, we want to reach out, myself and Brent, to this village of Lone Rock, the city of Spring Green, start entertaining the thoughts of eventually passing ownership onto folks like them, and try to phase out our ownership and operations of the airport, as it is kind of very much on the corner of two counties and has significant impacts on two municipalities versus the two counties. Preliminary guidance called for a 0% increase, so action is recommended to the committee to submit a proposal to Sauk County on Richland County's position in going forward to the 2022 budget and entering a new agreement ownership. And again, Sauk County, with their corporation counsel, is working with their previous interim counsel, Von Briesen, to sort that agreement out. The last piece that I was aware that Von Briesen was looking for was a property description through Sauk County. So the estimated financial impacts on adjusting these ownership percents for operations and for capital, we'd look at an increase from our previous year of about 17,000 to a little over 23,000. So we're looking at an increase or a difference of $6,387 on levy impact. And then for our estimated impact on the ditch improvements, and this would be the drainage, lights, raising the strip, the funds, etc. A 25%, we were looking at about 72,000, and this incorporated then the funds that were contributed by Cardinal Glass, as they put in almost $290,000 toward the project. We're estimating then we're at about $72,000 of ARP funds. If we were at 25%, moving forward to 30% is nearly $87,000 of ARP funds. So it's a difference increase of about $14,000 in ARP funds, again, to meet the capital improvement designs that we're petitioning for. We have not been awarded the grant, but we're taking all necessary steps to apply for the grant in September, and we don't see any reason right now that the airport would not get it. So the total over increase would be $20,000 for 2022, with $6,300 of that coming from levy. Mr. Chair.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Marty with a motion. And I'll second it. Discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I historically, I got involved in the Tri-County Airport about 15 months ago. And frankly, my inclination going in was to pull out. Iowa County had just pulled out of their agreement, and I thought, what the heck? We really don't have, well, it's not even in our county, for gosh sakes, and how much could this impact Richland County? But in the process, after attending a few meetings, I found out that the impact on Richland County is very great. And if we're really committed to economic development, this is a kind of a minor spend. I realize we're talking about thousands of dollars, but also at that time, the airport, as you recall, Channel 27 covered it, the news networks, flooding in the airport. That was another reason for pulling away. But through the work of Clinton and Mr. Miller, Brent Miller from Sauk County, and then our engineering firm, Jewell and Associates, and a lot of diligent work on the part of the airport committee, that pretty much it's going to resolve itself in a way that I think is the ideal use of local funds, and that is a little bit of local funds and a lot of federal state funds. And we're talking about the big ditch, as I call it, and it'll drain the water away from the airport down to the local Bear Creek, I think it is. And that's kind of a 2-for-1 thing, because, or 30 for 1 maybe, besides helping the airport, that's going to help all of our Richland County residents who live in that area, whose basements regularly flood, whose driveways regularly flood, whose farm fields regularly flood. It's going to help them. And it's just amazing what has been accomplished here, because almost, I call it almost working without a net. Mr. Langreck and Mr. Miller have put together a plan which is a 99% surety. I mean, we're going to put up some money. There's going to be a grant, and for a few thousand, and now Cardinal Glass, who's the biggest privately, has seen the kind of work that is being done and the commitment on the part of the counties. And now they've pledged several $100,000 toward the project. So it's an ideal combination of private, public, local, county, local, and state and federal funds coming together here to accomplish something that's very good for our community.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Guess going forward, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? No one's against. Motion carried. All right. Number 6 is the administrator report on the 2022 budget process.
Mr. Chair, let me pull up my item here today. So this is going to be a lengthy report, as you can see on your agenda. We're going to talk on essentially 5 to 6 different items right here. A lot of this is going to be educational, again, and kind of recapturing what we're going to try to accomplish through the budget and understanding the process and the different materials that are going to try to help the decision points that are going to be made. So item number 6 with all the sub-paragraphs are kind of the informational, and then your item number 7 on your agenda is discussion of possible action regarding the 2022 budget process. If there are different actions that you want to make in rendering guidance, in changing items of that nature, then we can follow up with that on the next agenda item. But in your packets or in your folders, you'll see agenda number 6, the administrator's report. Today, looking for a motion to accept and file this report, and again, any additional guidance by action can be made under agenda item number 7. So the background on this item is the following. A report is intended to educate on the remaining 2022 budget process and the decision supporting materials. Item number 6A, the department presentation process in packet format. The following is intended to review and to help ensure that supervisors are familiar with the materials that will be presented with a preliminary budget presentation on August 20th, our next routine scheduled meeting, and then the department budget presentations on the 24th, and that's the marathon day that we have tentatively locked down for all the committee meetings. On the 20th, this is what the expectation will be. The administrator will present the preliminary budget with the assistance of finance staff. The preliminary budget will include the administrator's summary, department summaries, and line item worksheets, which will be housed in the finance and personnel folder for your viewing. And already I think we're starting to dump those in there. Is that correct, Josh? We have items that we're moving in the committee folder. Okay, that'll be soon to follow. We'll start putting those in there for your viewing. The organizational budget summary document, which is the overall summary sheet that the county board takes action on in December, and then the budget tracking matrix, or the gap fill tracking document that we'll take a look at here today. So the first document that I'd like us to take a look at is going to be a budget packet. And so on here is an example. If you look in your folder underneath 06A, you'll have a example budget here. And this is, in fact, the administrator's budget, and incorporates, on the top here, you'll see there's several different funds, which we'll talk about later in the meeting today, but just to understand what the layout is, so we can kind of all visualize where we're trying to find the information that we find near and dear to us. the top part's going to capture, what funds are and what accounts the department is operating with. And then we have the first question of please provide a brief department description of what you're doing. And that's should be concisely enough of what is it that the department does, what major functions is it performing on behalf of the community with the funds that it's provided. Then we have a list of mandated functions and services provided by the department program. When we start talking about mandated services, it kind of can quickly get cloudy. Typically, it's viewed as being a federally or a state mandated type of a program. And then you also, though, have considerations of, well, if it's not mandated by that, it's still mandated by this county board resolution or by this ordinance, or like in a case like an administrator's office, we would say it is not legally binding that the Richland County has an administrator office, but there's a lot of different other federal compliance issues that we had to try to help monitor and do on behalf of the county, not that they can't be displaced and put back on the department. And then we say list of non-mandated services and functions provided by the department. So in context of your administrator's office, again, there's layout here of different administrative functions and financial functions, human resourcing functions that are laid out here to have an understanding of what we're spending our funds on. And we say explain the department program's major goals and projects intended with the 2022 budget. And again, for our office here, we're trying to march forward with our strategic goals, as well as if we gain administrative support with the assistant that was position that was adopted by resolution. If we're able to retain that, we're hoping to gain more public engagement and more responsiveness. Summarize the impact of the 22 budget with the guidance. So this section here is a way for the department then to explain to you the guidance given out of a 0% levy increase. We've already taken actions of wage increases. We've given out guidance on anticipated health insurance increases. So this is a section here of the department to explain what are the impacts underneath the guidance language that has been given out to them. Underneath item 6, then we say summarize the department program services and staffing adjustments in response to the guidance. And this is kind of then talking in specifics on what type of adjustments that had to be made. And item 7 is kind of visualize then that we have the summary of the cost impact to restore those specified types of services. Section number 8 then is list any anticipated capital improvements projects from Fund 75 or Fund 92 that are anticipated, and then list any recommendations given by the supervisory committee. Number 10, we say list any future operational changes needed or requests for considerations. That kind of is the breakdown on the overall summary. Is there any questions again on what we visualized with that summary narrative for departments that the supervisors have? Excellent.
My only comment would be is that it lays it out real nice for them so that they can work through it, I would say. Hopefully they're feeling the same thing, but at least you've got some guidance to get through where you need to get to, and you can explain where you're going to come up short.
And kind of working through the process too, we've already identified some improvements and some changes that we plan on doing with the summary. We've had 2 department head meetings kind of in regards to it, but everybody's kind of worked in their own bubbles, and some things got interpreted a little bit different than other ones. But overall, I think that's been a good thing because we've been able to kind of through an evolution process tease out some good ideas out of it. So I think going forward into the next year, it'll be slightly different, but try to continue using the same tools if they're found effective. So the next document that you're going to see is going to be the breakout of the general ledger. Let me see if I can flip it around here for folks at home.
That's 6 feet, wait. What is it?
This is underneath 6A, 06A. So then we'll...
Oh, the first one.
Yes, then the next thing that you're going to see when you're going through these in your committee folder is you'll then have access to all the worksheets. And the worksheets are kind of complicated beasts. There is a cheat guide that's available that we'll have in the folder as well. Let me pull that up real quick. That's gonna, there we go. So accounting supervisor, they'll also put in there kind of a cheat sheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It looks like this. So correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, but in the actual worksheets that are going to be put out, it gets a little confusing on the headers across. I think I have to go back and reshare. Let me reshare it here. So on the spreadsheets that you'll see, it gets a little confusing with the language that's going across here. And unfortunately, we can't change and modify those because we're trying to keep them all in an upload format that'll go back in the AS400 system. So our headings across the top are rather confusing. So there's a spreadsheet in there that talks to the extent of what those actual columns mean and a little bit more easier to understand language of essentially the last year. Josh, if I can have you you can kind of talk us through.
So the actual ending balance 2 years ago column, that's all zeros right there. That's actually the actuals for 2018. And then each column to the right adds a year. So you get 2019, 2020. Actual ending balance next year is 2021. And that would be through 6/30 of 2021. So it's only half the year. Then the revised budget next year was the 2021 adopted budget. And then the work budget 2022 request is where the department heads would fill in their budget items for the year. And then if they want in the budget memo column, they could put any comments.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
question. Yep. So we're actually showing the budgeted year, the year before and the year before, because last year was such an unusual year, I think. Is that correct?
That's how I think our system, how it spits out our worksheets to us. I don't know if, and part of it too is it gives you that incremental kind of history back on where the funds are coming from or where the accounts are coming from. On the left, you'll see all the fancy numbers in a string. And Josh, if you can just kind of help educate us again on what all those string numbers, what they mean.
So in the column that says fund and account, that's the whole fund string. So the first 2 digits in that string is actually the fund number. The second series, or the 5115 here, that's a department code, which would relate to an expense line. If those were a 4200 or 4800, those would all be revenue accounts at that point. And the last 4 digits are the actual general ledger account.
Any questions on the breakdown of the strings? Get a small glimpse of Josh's world while he's going gray.
We're glad Josh is in that world.
Yeah.
Okay, let me open this back up. So then with this then too, anticipate then seeing supplemental supporting types of documents that are probably going to arrive with it. Examples might be the breakdown of the different positions by salary, which is provided out to the courthouse ones if included. There might be also different narratives or different budget summaries that may be included at the discretion of the department. So again, when you're viewing these in the folder with the intentions that we're all kind of, as time permits, doing the homework prior to our meeting with the department heads, that we kind of have an understanding of what the department budget is trying to accomplish and what the limitations that were put onto them, how they had to respond to it, and then recommendations of if they're going to try to add those functions back in, what the cost is.
I have a question. If I'm not here on the 20th, you're going to have it in my file that I can look at them ahead, right?
Yes, we're hoping to have all these in on the 20th. And we're going to be presenting it as this is the preliminary budget, and kind of again another walkthrough. It might be a little bit redundant, but with being a little bit light today, and we don't deal with this stuff on an average day. So in order to try to help feed it in and retain it, we'll probably be doing a walkthrough on a lot of the same information today before we meet with the departments then on the 24th. Okay, so that was an example of what the department packets should be looking like in your folders when they arrive. The next item then is going to be an organizational budget summary document, and that's something you're familiar with. It's an overall summary of the organization by functions. It meets our compliance with state statute. It is the formal document that the budget that we post for our notice, and that the county board will adopt. And then again, that'll have the preliminary type numbers on it. The final document then will be kind of the roadmap, if you will, for trying to entertain how we're going, or identifying our levy gap and how we're going to fill that gap. And it's a document that's going to look like this, if I can pull it up here to share. So it's a little bit, kind of looks like what we worked off of last year when we were identifying potential different options for cuts and increases as we closed our budget gap coming into 2021. But the overall idea is you're going to have a document here that is going to have the preliminary budget gap, and this is got 5,500 in there, but I don't know what the number is as of right now. It could be higher. I doubt that it will be lower. From there, then you're going to have in a list of all the different added on things. So an example with the administrator's budget is, in order for the administrator's office budget to stay underneath guidance of a 0%, the recommendation is that the administrative support, or the assistant to the administrator, is going to have to be cut out in order to meet the guidance presented. We will have a running list then of showing that if that is something that we're going to add back in, it would be an additional gap. It's going to expand our expenditures. And potentially there is also fill options if we want to eliminate the $2,024 in the that was identified in the administrator's budget for training. That might give us some fill to help close our gap. There's probably going to be a lot more additional gap requests coming from departments than opportunities of how to fill that, just for the sake that we're obviously running very bare bones at the present. We'll try to have these laid out the best we can prior to the 20th, prior to the 24th, but part of the conversation we're having with the departments on the 24th is going to be to tidy this up and to really kind of have an idea of what is all there. So that would be part of the conversation. Past all the different department fund impacts and proposals and options then, I hope to have a section there that kind of tries to capture the options and resources for additional fills, to include some maneuverabilities that may exist with sales tax, estimates on sales tax, estimate with interest income, property taxes, very limited, but potentially. Undesignated fund spending, which we're hoping to get a bead after we close out our audit on estimating what our current undesignated general fund looks like, to know if it's appropriate, if we can do a spending from that. American Rescue Plans, we are planning on shrinking down how much we're using against the land in zoning and land grant. Opioid settlement is in the works. I don't know if it's going to be finalized to a point of understanding if we can use it to offset levy in 2022. Federal infrastructure bill, which is, I believe, moving forward, might be another option for us to reduce levy expenditures potentially. But again, I don't know if we're going to have all the details going forward in 2022, as well as then Pine Valley, who has a debt service fund that they're operating with, the potential request for expenditures coming back to Fund 10. So a section there on essentially fill. So the top half of the worksheet is probably, we're going to arrive at a letter of or a number of what our preliminary budget has for a gap. The second section is going to be how much more gap do we want to make? And then the bottom section is going to be what kind of levers do we have to fill the gap in its entirety. And so we'll go through this on the 24th with departments. I anticipate having hopefully a pretty solid 95% solution on what this looks like to kind of use as the running worksheet and the centerpiece of those types of discussions. And then I plan on coming to you then in the following meeting with a recommendation to the committee on, this is what I'm recommending we do for fills. This is what I recommend we do for added and additional gaps. And then that can kind of start the discussion point then from the finance and personnel on parts that you agree with, parts that you don't, and recommendations for changing that.
Mr. Chair, a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Should we not schedule anything for the 25th?
We can, let me pull it up here. I'll get back to that. It is a very aggressive day.
24th is
On the 24th is correct. Yep.
I'm wondering if it'll carry over into the 25th.
I'm I don't know. I've never tried to get through quite so much in one day. I'm reluctant to say it's impossible, but it's going to be a very passionate and full day. Moving down here in the document, we're looking at trying to cram in, I shouldn't say cram, accommodate, Mr. Chair. We're going to try to accommodate for all of our departments in one day from 8 a.m. Extended out through the back of 4:30 p.m. with no breaks. We'll probably have to, I don't know if I can make you guys go in buckets, and we'll probably have to have ham sandwiches and water somewhere along the line. But it's going to be a very, very intense day.
Ordering lunch, right?
Yes. Yes. And
There
it's,
isn't any place to eat lunch on that schedule.
Oh, I know.
it will, I'm anticipating finger food that's going to be set out throughout the meeting and graze as you can kind of a thing. It might not be the most professional etiquette for the weight and levity of the conversations to be had, but I don't know how else we're going to get through it. And without trying to schedule down another day with your people's lives, this remains kind of the solution. Changes while we're here, changes to the department head presentations. Derek, we moved you up earlier in the day at 8:30, and we incorporated then room for family court commissioner and property lister 10:45 and 11 o'clock respectively. My position there was then bumped down to the end of the day, where corporation counsel all handle that, as well as ancillary budgets and funds. And we'll redistribute this to departments too to confirm that they're in the knowing. Okay, where do we leave off? Ah, yes, back to August 20th. So on August 20th then, the next meeting we have, I'll be presenting then hopefully a fairly boiled down version of what the tracker's going to look like as well. The administrator and finance staff will then review the goals and challenges again facing 2022 budget. We'll walk through the documents again, ensuring that the committee is familiar with the worksheet structures. We'll reference the cheat sheet again. We'll review the guidance that shaped the preliminary budget and talk on how we arrived at the preliminary number. And any existing compliance issues that we have as well will be identified at that meeting. On the 24th, then we'll sit down with the departments or representatives, and then we'll go through those packets as we had kind of talked about and looked at briefly. Mine is the example. And then again, we'll have that, hopefully that budget tracking, fill versus expand kind of worksheet there to help us in taking notes as well. We did talk on the matrix, the capital improvement, capital projects report. I'm also hoping to report to bring forward a finalized version of that on the 20th. There will be a couple things to tweak on it. Kind of one of them is in regards to what actions we just took with the Tri-County Airport, as well as we had a little bit additional fill based on the moves that we had. Let me pull that up. So we made two changes from the proposed plan of we eliminated a squad and then brought up the sheriff's jail camera into the mix. With the levy bubble where it was, we were a little bit shy. The two moves that we had of the reduction and then the add-in still left us a little bit shy of 150,000. I guess my recommendation is we're not going to have capacity to fit in another full project. We did have iPad replacement that kind of went in to help fill that I moved up Barb. And then and with the extra 11,000 at this point, I'm recommending that we dedicate towards our road infrastructure. I know that might be a little premature, not knowing what's going to come out with the infrastructure federal bill. But again, the premise that we kind of sold the county board on going into this last year is this is a way to keep up with our maintenance and our road infrastructure. So I'll be bringing that forward then with a $50,000 mark with an added amount going into the $350,000 for road improvements. And again now, so this sets up our borrowing. We'll have to have discussions and things kind of set with Carol going forward. As we hit August and September, we have to do our authorization resolution, and we have to do our approval to sell bonds in October. A reminder that in order to do these projects that you're seeing here underneath that short-term borrowing project, it's 3/4 vote of elected county board supervisors. So it will require 16 yes votes, regardless of how many are present. And if we are unable to pass an authorization resolution, then we have to make the decisions then on, do these projects not happen? Or do we displace other levy types of fundings to cover them? Or do we use another funding source that may be available to cover them? Any questions at this point, Mr. Chair?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay,
Anyone else?
keep on plowing here. I don't know how to make my voice less nasally. It's just kind of how it is. Okay, here we go. Okay, a review on our short-term borrowing. So we're on track yet to finalize with that. One outstanding item is to get our audit complete, as our audit numbers are going to be needed to complete the borrowing for those funds. We did a modification on the one date from August 24th to August 20th. And again, this will be the final decision then on the dollar amount that we're going to borrow. As I just described, I plan on contributing about $11,000 more towards our county trunk improvement to make that an even $1,050,000. Finance and Personnel Committee then would review on the 7th for the initial resolution. And that's where you'll be making the decision then to recommend that resolution to the county board. It'll go forward to the county board on the 27th. On the 27th then is when you'll need the 16 yes votes. I'm sorry, 21st. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. The 21st is when you'll need the 16 yes votes in order for it to carry forward. We'll then do the admin of the official statement and the notice of the sale and distribution on October 13th, and Carol is excellent at handling that on her behalf. The bids will go out to the clearinghouse on the 26th. Then we'll award and lock in the interest rate, and then the closing will be on the 23rd. Repayment back in on the 1st of March 2022.
In October, we're going to meet the last one.
That is correct. Yep. It'll be done in conjunction with the budget on the final Tuesday of the month. Okay. A review on a refined timeline. So as of today, we have our budgets that are, I think, 95% in from the departments. On the 20th, again, we'll be presenting the preliminary budget to the Finance and Personnel Committee. We'll be doing that with the assistance of Derek and Josh as our finance staff. We'll have department reviews with the administrator and the personnel committee, as we talked about, on the 24th. If we have to, the 25th and 26th are reserved as auxiliary dates, and I guess that's on my end. I'm not sure what you guys' personal calendars look like and what capacity that might be in. If that's evenings on WebEx or something of that nature, we could try to make it match, provided that MIS is available to do things like that or show me how to do things like that. And we'll try to get through that. On the 7th, then, the administrator's recommendation will come forward. So after we listen to all the departments, we go through our little matrix. I'm going to come back to you on September 7th with, this is what I recommend that you do. From that, you can accept it as is or discuss on how that you recommend that it should be changed through actions and motions. On the 17th, then, that'll give you one day to kind of, or one meeting, and we don't have to have Finance and Personnel's decision on that on the 7th. You'll have time to ponder upon it, to discuss on it, to lobby on it, things that you have to do as elected officials. On the 17th, though, looking for an accepted budget by the Finance and Personnel Committee so that we can get it off for our level 3 notification, level 2 notification. That has to go out 2 or 3 weeks, and then having the hearing on it and the approval then on October 26th. Questions or concerns with any of that? I believe that takes me to the end of agenda item number 6, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we need to make a motion to accept and file the report.
Also move, Gentis.
Linda with the motion,
I'll second.
Marty with the second.
Mr. Chair, if I can just have a minute to ask, is any staff, does anybody have any comments that you'd like to make that I'm missing out on, needs to be addressed? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
None against. All right, motion carries. Supposed to be on. Number 7, discussion and possible action regarding the budget process.
This would just be an opportunity if there was anything that you wanted to change, any type of additional guidance that you'd want to give as a body in marching forward on this. If you wanted to, with the process or with the documents or with the capital improvement, capital projects, would be your opportunity, Mr. Chair.
Does anybody have any comments? Anything they want to change?
Our question, our annual borrowing is going to be what amount?
Anticipating the $1,050,000, which I think is a previous action we took with the committee. But finalizing that apportionment on the capital projects plan. Another thing that I'm hoping comes as visual with our capital projects plan is we were able to get down to an amount for borrowing this year, but with the deferred projects now pushed onto the following year for short-term expectations, now we're at about a $2.7 million bill to pay if we're going to try to keep up with requests from this previous year and some that were even deferred from the previous year from that. So they're stacking up. We might have some additional help, through ARP funds, through infrastructure bills to try to help manage that, but we're still kind of walking down a path of deferred maintenance on a lot of issues.
But I would think, though, that the infrastructure bill is going to help us in that regard. It's got to.
I'm hoping so. It's heavily on roads. Josh will be busy. A lot of it is heavy on broadband, from what I understand, which I don't know how much of that will come to a local government to sort out versus directly to providers is yet to be determined.
All right. Melissa, you have anything?
That sounds good.
Doesn't look like we need any action to be taken here.
No, sir.
All right. Discussion and possible, item number 8, discussion and possible action on clerk and administrator office budgets for 2022.
Okay, as our oversight committee, and just kind of as a preview on what it would look like, and if there's any type of, guidance you'd like to give yourself going forward into next month, perhaps, a layout on what the administrator office budget looks like and what will be presented to you at the next meeting. These are the different funds right now that are assigned to the administrator's office. You have a contingency fund. In that fund, this last year, we allocated $450,000 in change of new monies to contribute towards it. And as a reminder, we did that with several different expectations. One was we were expecting revenue reductions going forward into this year. So this was a buffer for lost revenues, as well as knowing that our placement costs potentially were under budgeted as well. We do have fund balance there existing that would carry over into the following year, but recommendation for a 0% increase into a contingent fund. So that creates some space for us for other expenditures. Community development block grant, we have not done anything with this. It's zero. Well, it should maintain a 0-0. It's where this is the fund where our money's coming in for the projects down in Lone Rock, up here at the auditorium. So that's an in and out from monies coming in to pay the contractors. Debt service fund, we had $150,000 contribution going into that from our short-term borrowing last year. The debt service fund, and working with the finance folks, is something that we have to get a better beat on with our Fund 95, which was created. Right now we have monies kind of going into a debt 30, and then our expenditures, to Fund 92, and our expenditures kind of coming out of Fund 92 to track it. So that's some budgetary type of things that we have to work out and essentially, before we finalize the budget, determine where the debits and the credits are going to come from. UW Center Richland outlay, we budgeted at $60,000 last year with reductions in place and troubles is a $50,000. And understand that's not going to be a very popular type of a proposal to it, but if there's capacity through the process to restore that, it'll be added as an add-on. Simon's Capital Improvements was a fund that we had utilized previously for the driveway and I think a roofing project, and it's been no activity in it this year, so it'll be a zero. Courthouse Repair Fund is at 20,000, 20,000. Do keep in mind the previous year we did reduce that though and used short-term capital borrowing for radiators, which we do not have in this current one. So this kind of puts us in a less than comfortable position, but we do have some other different fund balances potentially that'll help get us through the short term. Revolving loan fund, we don't have any activity through that. We have one existing account on it. The next collection here, 58 through 90, are inactive funds that we haven't had any activity with, not seeing any reason to put levy towards them going into the following year. And we might have to do some account cleaning, as Josh and Derek have talked about going forward. Short-term borrowing, as mentioned, is we're using it as an expense kind of fund, if you will, right now for our short-term borrowing, and we have to kind of clean that up. Chamber of Commerce is another account. It's underneath the General Fund 10. There was a $4,000 contribution allotted for it that has not been requested as of now this year. Concerns with the council on where they're at and their standing. I think they've went without hired help for quite a while, and the responsiveness and not quite knowing what they're doing with that is recommend a zero going forward into the next year. If a petition comes forward again and there's a good reason to contribute back to the Chamber of Commerce, I recommend we entertain that in the future. Going forward then into the office budget for the administrator's office budget. General functions are under 5918. You know what it's kind of about. The listed mandated functions. Of course, we have none that are legally bound to us to have to execute. You folks have the ability to transition to an administrative coordinator type of a government again, and to be able to put that hat on an existing position. So it is not legally bounded. At the same time, the office and the budget exists in a service support role to gain centralized administration with intentions to promote efficiencies, accountability, transparencies, and reduced liabilities. The listed non-mandated services and functions provided by the department and program, again, are your administrative functions are laid out before you, financial functions, human resourcing functions. These things are all quite necessary, but if you wanted to eliminate this, it could be decentralized and pushed back down onto the departments, not necessarily, and some of the departments are handling a lot of bits and pieces of these already. But again, if it's not necessarily mandated, but don't know if I'd recommend doing without them at the moment. What we plan on doing with the budget, again, is to complete the strategic goals established by Resolution 2107. And if we are able to add back in an assistant to the administrator position to gain more responsiveness and public engagement, the strategic planning to be able to get more involved with that, as well as employee development and planning and policy development. The summary of the impacts underneath the guidance, again, to stay underneath a 0% levy increase, proposing that big piece is that the assistant to the administrator position has to be eliminated. It wasn't in last budget, and the only way to kind of get it back, we've looked at other ways. If we had another operational expenses to try to do a reduced position, even doing a reduction on contracted type of services, it really just doesn't. Any type of little bit was there for additional contracted services has kind of been absorbed now with the accounting supervisor, payroll benefit specialist wage increases. So there's not a whole lot there to play with other than the reduction of that position. The other part of it too is you do still yet have, the other part of it too is, the reduction of an administrator position still again is an option to the county. It comes to the tune of $110,000 annually. At that point, having an administrative assistant position, maybe you could do something as a coordinator type role, HR type role is an option as well. And then also recommend then negotiating with the county administrator to suspend the agreed upon 2022,000 wage increase for the agreement. The summary then, so the bottom line then is to, as you saw on the tracker, is to add back the assistant administrator position is a $74,000 add-in. I have no capital projects planned. The list of any types of recommendations would be coming from this body to itself at a future meeting. I do have a list of any future operational changes needed or requests for consideration. Long-term planning on the future of Richland County Courthouse and Jail building should begin soon. A decision point could be approaching the county, once the existing bonds for the nursing home are paid off, knowing if intentions are to stay or to go shapes future investments in the building and potential needs for future space development. So I think that's something that we have to try to get a gauge on now, so we know how to posture ourselves and how much we want to continue investing in this building, or if we're going to be looking for other estates. The general, so the worksheet here, significant increases that you'll see because of, and I kind of put it in the memo side, we'll plug it back into the budget side to make sure it jives. But we incorporated the two payroll positions and accounting supervisor positions came out of Derek's onto mine. So there's a blue mine up as if it was truly a zero from what this worksheet looked like last year. That we added the two positions, and then likewise though we did the reductions off of Derek. So you'll see an increase on this one of the same amount of a reduction to account for Josh's and for Tammy's position. And then below that is the two different, or the wage counts. So the assistant administrator position was budgeted with a full family premium share from the county and comes to the tune of $4,124.46. Again, there is a little bit of about $2,000 that is anticipated for travel expenses and education that could be cut out if desired for a little bit of fluff, and that's been added into the worksheet. And I will defer to Clerk Kalish if you would like to speak on his.
Okay, did they all get a copy of my stuff, Clint?
Oh, I put it in the folder here.
Okay. I have a copy, so I'm good just for those guys to look at. Okay. So for mine here, I did the same thing Clinton did in terms of documentation. So a brief description of what the county clerk's office does. So I won't read that all, but I think you're all familiar with what the office of the county clerk does. I've outlined some of the core duties there. Going on to number 2, mandated functions and services provided by the department or program. The county's clerk's office, those duties are outlined in chapter 59.20 through 23 A through T. So again, I won't read that entire list of things to do, but those are all the things that state statute says the county clerk's office should complete. Number 3, the list of non-mandated services and functions provided to by the department and program. So effective June 15, 2021, with resolution number 21-84, there were those additional duties of finance officer that were assumed by myself as the county clerk. Elements of said additional duties include the assistance with the strategic goals outlined in resolution 21-107, which are the digitization of resolutions and ordinances, increasing public access, development of finance and purchasing policy, and then assisting with the preliminary assessment and planning for next generation of finance and payroll systems. So some of that stuff has been put on the back burner, but in terms of the digitization of resolutions and codification of ordinances, that is another one of those projects which you will see me mention here in the budget shortly. So here are the county clerk's major goals and projects intended with the 2022 budget apportionment. So this number 1 here, and I have probably far more detail than what I'll go into right now, but that's just what I do. So number 1, one of the big goals is the codification and digitization of all county ordinances and resolutions. So again, the completion of this task aligns with the strategic goals outlined in resolution number 1984. Completion of this project would result in a legally reviewed, updated, electronic, easily accessible, searchable, and user-friendly code of ordinances. Currently, right now, all county ordinances, resolutions, and meeting minutes are in ginormous 11x17 portfolio books that are typewritten. Some of them have been converted electronically, but not all of them. In terms of a code of ordinances, we really don't have an official book or code of ordinances. They are loosely put together as the county's ordinances, but finding them is tricky, and if any of you have ever had to do that, you'll understand what I mean. but I have collected 3 different quotes to make this possible. So we won't go over these now, but for budget purposes, I just went with the most expensive one that I got. The quotes were pretty similar to each other anyway, so there's really not a huge amount of differentiation between the two, but here's me just kind of outlining that in terms of what that strategic goal number 1 looks like. Second goal here would be to update the general records retention schedule, purge any obsolete documents, and then a potential office relocation. So we did adopt ordinance number 99-11 in April of 1999, which outlines how and what the county, keeps, purges, and that schedule. So this schedule hasn't really been kept up, nor have documents really been purged to align with this schedule. So as those of you know, there's lots of paper in the county clerk's office. So one of the big tasks is to get rid of what paper we can and then keep what we can and have this all in somewhat of an organized state. So that's big goal number 2. Okay, and then I provided here a rough outline on how I would accomplish that task. And because, we're thinking about dollars all the time, try to figure out or, allocate some money and hours towards it for staff time of myself and the deputy county clerk to accomplish goal number 2. Goal number 3 with possible reductions in resources is to look into the transitioning with vote election duties from the county to the local municipalities. So currently right now the county clerk performs all of these duties with this office. If we're going to talk about limited resources and how we can accomplish those tasks, there are some items such as this that can be removed from the county clerk's office. We are not statutorily required to perform all of the election duties that we do. Yes, I am the chief election official for the county, but that does not require me to enter in all that information for townships as well. I'm not sure how I feel about this, but because we're offering solutions to problems, this is a solution that could free up staff time and allocate resources to other mandated services as the county clerk's office. And I do know that other counties in the state are doing this. I've talked closely with several of them that have. It's a bit of a process, but it's doable and it's an option. So number 4 then is train my new deputy clerk. As the previous deputy county clerk, I understand the importance of training and being well versed in what the county clerk does. So although it's hard to put a dollar amount on this, I need to take the time to train my deputy clerk to have the most efficient deputy that I can and to make sure the office can run as efficiently as possible in my absence. The 5th major goal is to continue efforts to streamline office operations. Again, as I mentioned up here, we've already started to work on this, but we're no longer using a typewriter to record monthly proceedings of the county board into a folio book. Minutes are already typed in a Word format. We've kind of revamped the way that we do accounts payable, so those department heads here know that they now need to submit a voucher cover sheet with their bills to tell the accounting folks which funds to pay from and to streamline that process of getting bills from a department. So Josh and Tammy, my deputy, are no longer spending time coding bills for people's budgets, so departments have a little more accountability of their budgets when they're coding expenses out of them. Let's see, what else do we have here? So we're still converting documents that are historically and have historically been done on pen and paper into electronic formats. And then the other thing that will likely happen, or that I would like to happen, would be publishing a condensed form of the county board minutes to help the reduction costs. Currently, we pay between $1,200 and $1,600 a month to publish those minutes in the county in the newspaper as we have been. We don't have to do that. We can publish. We have to publish ordinances, but resolutions and some other items can be taken away from publication costs that I would presume could lower that monthly cost maybe $500 or $600 depending on the amount of minutes. So that's another thing to look at when we talk about streamlining office operations. So item number 5, the impact of the 2022 budget guidance. So perhaps it should come as no surprise to most of you listening or in this room, the county clerk's office has minimal revenues. During the year, we do approximately 80 marriage licenses, which equate to roughly $400 in revenue that go directly back to the county clerk's office. Other miscellaneous revenues, such as copies, sales of directories, sale of plat books, and the use of a fax machine are infrequent and not large enough to make a difference in the overall budget. When I say that, I mean less than $100 impact on the budget. Given these items can be received electronically or via a mobile device, the demand for those, like it once was, is nearly non-existent. So what that results in is cuts to staff and a few to operations are really the only places in which the budget has the ability to be reduced to meet the 2022 budget guidance. So this is what changes I made to, or this is what I would have to do to meet my budget for the 2022 budget year with the guidance. So I would need to likely reduce the deputy county clerk's office to 30 hours per week. So this equates to the county clerk's office having no staff should the county clerk or the deputy be out at the same time. The county does have established regular office hours in which departments are to be staffed. So without a full-time deputy, then there may be instances in which the office cannot be staffed. Just some other highlights from my budget. I, as a county clerk, will not be taking health insurance. There was, when Victor was here, he took a single plan, and then previous employees took a single plan. So
who's calling?
And I am not taking health insurance, so there's a little bit of savings there. You can see office supplies are reduced to roughly $21.86 a month. I've reduced the basic advertising $600, and then I've budgeted no funds for any conference registration, mileage, or hotel stays. So what this means is, in short, I will not have it in my budget to attend any conferences, including the WCCA conference, which is the Wisconsin County Clerks Association conference. Although attendance is only once a year, this is quite beneficial for a county clerk in many ways in terms of networking and just learning from people. I'm not opposed to pay for these items myself and go, but that also does not really reflect the actual budget that we're trying to get to with running a county clerk's office. The option of utilizing shared printers between the county administrator and county clerk's office is currently being looked into. And there was a web-enabled payroll services expense line, so that's to get your electronic pay stubs. That has been transitioned from the county clerk's office to the county administrator's office. It is a payroll function and not necessarily a county clerk's function. And with the offices being split, it made sense to move that over. So I want to pull up my sheet. Maybe it just keeps going, sorry. Oh, it is, okay, good. Okay, so here's what my budget looks like. Like Josh said, you'll see all my accounts here on the side. 10.5141 is my budget as the county clerk. The three lines, the three numbers in the middle of that budget string, don't worry about. The last four are your actual expense lines. So you're going to see when you look at these sheets that they're similar between departments because every department may have the same expense like salaries, but we all have different department numbers, which is that second set of numbers. So if you look at the column here, and I edited this sheet a little bit, this goes against what we told department heads to do, but this was just for my personal purposes to do this and not upload into the 400. So this column that says 2021 revised with county clerk and deputy only alludes to what Clinton mentioned earlier, where we went back to our 2021 budgets and split those out for the right appropriations of people to the right departments. So what I did then is I took that number, that updated number, and then left all the expenses the same for 2021. So if we were to budget in 2021, this is what my base expenses would be for in terms of calculating my increase to levy. So that 181,824.02. The line above this where it says 2022 request, if I were to have my office staffed as it is now with, without any cuts or reductions being made, that's going to give me a deficit of $14,459.42. I want to highlight of that is this $11,025, which is coded under contract services because that accounts for the portion of the expenses that's involved in the codification and the digitization of the ordinances that I mentioned before in the summary. So when I factor that in there, because the directive was for me to include that in my county clerk core budget, that results in a deficit of $14,459.42 that I had to cut. So as I just kind of went over briefly with you, in order for me to do that, this is the 2022 reductions that I would need to make to have my budget balanced to what it was last year, thus having no increase on my portion of the levy. So I won't go through them all again, but you can see that's where I would need to reduce staff time. Again, highlighting that I'm not taking insurance. This is assuming that Clinton and I will be sharing a printer to help save on the cost, like for services and toner. I think Barb can attest to the fact that toner can be $300-400 easily, and with the printers that we have that are quite outdated, it's not unrealistic to think that we would burn through 4 or 5 cartridges of toner. I think we already have this year, maybe not 4 or 5, but at least 2 or 3. So that's assuming those shared expenses. And then as I alluded to or mentioned before, this would involve no money in the budget for any conferences other than paying the basic membership fees for those organizations that, again, are beneficial to be part of. In fact, I just talked to 2 county clerks that I met at the conference this morning to talk about this stuff. So there is value in those conferences, and again, I have no issues paying for it, but it's not a representation of our actual budget, and that's what we're trying to do here. So if I make all those reductions highlighted in that column, you can see that my deficit is down to 0. So this would be what I would need to do to, meet the budget guidance that was set out for all of us. Oh, sorry. And then these are the salary worksheets that are prepared for departments. Josh and I worked on these, but this is just the packet that I gave to Clinton. So I'll just go back up to, I'm almost done. So basically, in order to restore the budget, I would need $14,000, which is that deficit, to have my 2022 request met. I have no additional capital purchases or short-term borrowing or anything like that. The only thing that I would kind of want to look at going forward is, again, continuing to digitize documents, because at this point, none of that's been done. So there is cost in that because we have not digitized anything. When we go to do this, we're going to be making up for decades of not doing it. So it's not as simple as, sitting in front of a computer and scanning stuff. We need to do this methodically. So that's my summary. If anyone has any questions for me. Yes.
I have a question. So if you cut the deputy to 30 hours a week, but you're going to hire contract services to digitize for 11,000?
Yeah, so there's and this is what has to be decided kind of going forward. If the original task to me by rules was to have the code of ordinances reviewed, digitized, and codified, because that's not been done. So there's a service in doing that.
So you have, the deputy clerk can't do that. You have to have somebody else do that.
That's correct. This has to be done by legal professionals.
Why that couldn't be.
The bulk of those costs is the legal review. What they'll do is they'll look through all the ordinances, compare them to state statutes, do a full legal review, and present you with an updated, accurate.
And what percent of that will be done in this year with that amount?
So that's split between 2 fiscal years. They did allow me to pay half this year, half in 2022, and half in 2023. Both providers gave me that deal to charge half in 2022 and half in 2023. The codification in the organization has to be done by professionals that do this. Otherwise, it's pointless. Yes, that whole process will take 12 to 18 months, just to give you an idea of the scope of the project.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. C.
I'm having a little difficulty hearing. I wonder if Linda and Derek could turn up their volume a little bit with their voice box.
Turn it up. I'm pretty loud.
You can hear them really clearly, and I'm on WebEx.
Well, it must be my computer.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. I'll direct it to Administrator Langrick and then to Clerk Kalish. We do not have in the county a square foot cost on office space, which I believe we should have. In other words, Derek's office costs X amount because he has so many square feet. I think if we had such a line item in our budgeting process, we would find that the elimination of all this paper would probably add up to the amount of deficit that Derek is showing and more by elimination of these stacks of paper. I've been in that office. I was amazed because there's a bunch of paper there. I said, can't we get rid of this? Well, of course we can. It can be digitized. And some of it, maybe we can eliminate altogether. We'll have a big burning out in the parking lot. But we're not taking into account all things here. And that square footage and storage space costs money. And that's one of the things that I'd like to see addressed in the future.
Anybody else? Any comments?
And so it was kind of just a preview, Mr. Chair, if I can just kind of
Go ahead.
body it just for a second. And so to understand like how this is, you know, our delivering our budgets to you is a little bit longer than what we're going to be able to do with for each department coming forward. And this is kind of more of a, you know, a first kick at it from a supervisory kind of a thing before we take it in consolidation with everybody. But so kind of what to kind of re-summarize then on what Derek and I said was, you know, how it relates to our sheet then is we would have it play of saying, this is what we've had to do to reach the guidance. These are the things that we're recommending that be considered add back in, an assistant of a restoration of hours for a deputy. We'll get a cost for a codification of ordinance or a digitized option, one or the other, presumably. And then a recommendation to reincorporate training for Derek. So the intent then is to make that running list so that the conversation just isn't had with an administrator on, well, that's really important. And it's true, or with a clerk, that's really important to try to keep the whole thing in context of the organization as a whole of, yes, these are all very important. What's going to rise to the top for the most important of the most important? So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is this the only cut we get at your budget?
At this point, you can make a recommendation on it that you'd like to send along with it, but it's going to come right back to yourselves. So I plan on incorporating what we've presented here today on this document for us to consider or to present on the 20th to explain again on the 24th, and then for myself to come forward on the 7th with a recommendation on what gets added back in, if can be added in, and how we're going to fill the gap.
Well, besides the thing on the digitization, I'm concerned. Several things concern me. One is the reduction of your assistant, which we want you to have. The second thing is, well, I've lost my train of thought now. Yeah, the training, the conferences, that's a mistake. And you need that. You need to brush elbows with your compatriots in other counties. And we've already gotten some valuable insight into ways to tackle things. So I think that's a mistake.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Melissa.
I just also want to remind people that the chief or the deputy clerk is also our accounts payable specialist. So that person is, I assume, still performing all of the accounts payable specialist duties. And so a reduction in that position probably makes very little sense, and we will have to consider changing that.
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Chair.
C.
I agree with Melissa and with Mr. Brewer. I think it's a mistake to have a reduction in the position of the deputy. I would like to make a comment as well, and that is that I greatly appreciate the line item clarity of this format. It's really refreshing to see such clarity, and it allows us to understand and to analyze as a supervisory committee in a much more intelligent and informed way. And I want to thank you for this format, both you and Clint. This is excellent. I'm hopeful that this kind of clarity, line item clarity, will come forth among the departments. Thank you.
Linda?
Mr. Chair, can I ask one more thing?
Linda's speaking.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Learn more about that. I don't see that we're going to have time. I think we have to meet on the 25th to discuss. I know you said the 7th we'd come back, but when are we going to actually discuss that gap and so we can figure out where other cuts can be so this could be added? I'm a little unclear.
Thank you. The intent on the 24th is to kind of, I hope to have the list of all the different fills and proposed added gaps to it, hopefully ironed out at a 95% solution. When the departments are coming in, it's the expectation that we reasonably understand what's in their summary sheets. And if we have questions, to boil down what the questions we have for departments and then get their petitions on what gets added back in and other types of fills. On the 24th, I don't anticipate us having a whole lot of conversation points on how people feel by any means. I plan on, though, at least figuring out so that we understand everything that's on the list to be able to help visualize and prioritize that. When we come together on the 7th, then my intentions are to bring a list to you of saying, as an administrator, this is what I recommend. And then from that, kind of like we did with capital improvement, capital projects of, okay, we like this we don't like, motion second to change this and adjust this.
So at that point, we can figure out if we can add this back in.
Correct, yep, on the 7th.
I just want to know when we're going to really.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, yep.
Okay, thank you.
And
Just a second, Mr. Seat.
And then final action on the 20th is what I'm hoping, discussion on the 7th, if we need more time, but then by I believe the September 20th date is then we're accepting a resolution to go forward.
Mr. Seat?
Yes, a question for Administrator Langrick. At what point or when will the respective committees meet with their department head to review the budget? Will they do that along with you? Will that be before a certain date, or how is that going to work?
It's my understanding that a lot of them have already been presented to their supervisory committees. To be 100% honest with you, Supervisor Seep, I'm expecting that the committees are going to have the same type of responses that this group had here today. They're not going to be excited with what's being brought forward to being cut, because where we're at, the cuts that we're bringing forward are not terrifically good ideas. We don't have a whole lot of maneuverability to make cuts and not have it impact services and impact, in a lot of cases, people hours. So I'm anticipating that what the committees are going to be saying for the most extent is that they don't like those types of cuts. But again, that's all in the context and the vision and the context of just looking at one individual department. Unfortunately, we're at a point where we have to put all those on the table and look across the organization and understand, boy, this is a list of really, really bad ideas. Which ones are the mostest of the baddest do we want to take off of the list of bad ideas?
Have you met or are you meeting with each department head and are you being presented or reviewing a line item format like the one that's been presented today with each of them? Or are there still some on your bucket list?
The budgets are coming in. I think we have nearly all of them in. There might be a few outstanding ones. They're coming into you as the format that you would have seen today with the summary and then the budget line behind them. Accounting Supervisor Bell is reviewing them in context of looking for any types of red flags on some significant changes in some of those lines. I'll be reading through them, and we're going to try to tease out if we have questions with the departments to be able to understand it the best we can prior to hitting to the presentation of it on the 20th. Does that answer your question?
So they're coming into you after having been reviewed by the committee?
most of them. I don't know if all of them have been reviewed prior to being submitted to us, but they still have the opportunity between now and the Finance and the Personnel Committee taking final action for a committee to render an opinion upon it.
And is this matrix that you have presented, is that being followed by each department head?
For the summary and for the
Yes.
worksheets? We have exceptions with some of our worksheets, some of our proprietary funds. It won't be done on exactly the general ledger, like highway will come in with a little bit different format based on their costing.
I see.
Does that answer your question, Mr. C?
So, yeah, but there will be somewhat of a line item budget for each department.
That is in the intentions, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions? Comments? Anything? All right. So, do we want to take action on this? I guess what we're saying is that we approve what you've done to take to the Finance and Personnel meeting at the 24th. Is that what that is?
If you want to take some type of motion to accept it or recommend it, but it's kind of ends up being a recommendation right back to yourselves. So it's.
So do we need to do anything?
I don't think you have to do any
I
other
would say
thing.
we probably don't need to do anything since we're going to look at it at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of more so as an educational piece as well.
So
well done. Well done.
Agreed. And to answer your question, Mr. Seep, the committees that I'm on, all but one of them, we've seen all their budgets. So, and that's just because we didn't meet with the other one. Josh did it on his own, so we'll hope it turns out all right. All right. Okay, so we'll go to number 9, child support use of Fund 75 funds for computer purchases.
Pull this one up, Mr. Chair. Looking today for a motion to appropriate $8,000 of funds from Fund 75 Child Support Wall Improvement Project to the purchase of 2 new computers and supporting equipment for the Child Support Department. Background of this is under Fund 75. There's $25,000 appropriation was borrowed for the installation of the security wall in the Child Support Office to mitigate hostile intrusions and to meet compliance with IRS protocol. A less expensive solution was completed by Maintenance Supervisor Randy Nelson for $600. We would like to reappropriate up to $8,000 for the purchase of 2 new computers that will be purchased through the Richland County MIS. I'm not anticipating that it's going to approach anywhere probably near $8,000, but this would be at least set a limit for it. And again, this would be an appropriation from monies that was originally intended for a wall that I think we intended at one point to be ballistic proof, possibly rocket propelled grenade proof, and we went ahead with just mitigating it with a door lock plexiglass of trying to stop easy access. I would defer to Director Hoffman if there's any questions.
Any questions, anyone? Otherwise, I need a motion.
I'll move. We had our meeting last Friday morning and went over this in detail because it didn't cost much to have that wall. So, and they need this. So I so move.
I'll second.
Marty will second. Any further discussion or questions from anybody? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Against? No one's against. Motion carries. All right, so this would take us to future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items? Marty, do you have anything? Linda?
I have 2 things. One, I guess, because it came up with the broadband money last time, I think we need to, after we get to the other, we need to make a priority list of how we're going to use our
ARP funds.
yes, ARP funds.
Okay.
And then my second thing is, again, after we get done with the finance, and I realize Julie Keller is retiring, but we'll know how many properties are 5 years out from paying their taxes. And from what I understand, one of them in particular would be like motel out at Sextonville is 5 years out, that there's different ones talking about making the county look better and having more land for economic development. I'd like us to look into that.
For the delinquent list?
Yes.
Mr. Seep, do you have anything?
No, thank you. I didn't know there was a motel operating out there anymore, but go ahead. No, I'm fine. I don't want to be disciplined for being late for the meeting. I had a lot of trouble with my computer.
Okay, Melissa, do you have anything?
No,
And I don't have anything either. I guess I need a motion for adjournment.
I move.
I'll second.
Mr. Seep with the motion, second by Mr. Brewer. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Mr. Langberg.
Mr. Seep?
Langberg still on?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Seep.
Yes. Could you ask Josh